Sarah Jensen, editor of OEM Off Highway, and welcome to Design and Engineering Insights. Today I'll be speaking with Naimesh Dave, president of Oilgear, about some of the industry trends the company is seeing currently. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, definitely. So just to kind of get started, we wanted to kind of look at what are some of the things the company is seeing regarding global markets and trends, and maybe some of the infrastructure policies that might help the industry. So maybe if you could start by talking about maybe what are some of the key global markets Oilgear is seeing as growth opportunities for.
Sure. So from an Oilgear perspective, we actually participate, and we've got location in 11 different countries. So we've got 3 locations in North America. We are in Asia Pacific. We are in Latin America, and we have quite a footprint in Europe as well. So for sure, we get to participate in global markets and really kind of, understand what the trends are in each one of them. And quite honestly, if you look at what has happened just, with in the last 6 months or so, there has been a dramatic shift. And some of the trends that we were seeing have accelerated. So what I mean by that is prior to going into this recession led by COVID, we were seeing nice rebound and uptick in Asia Pacific. So the markets were starting to get better. The customers and the government were really starting to focus on quite an investment in their infrastructure in Asia Pacific, and that has accelerated tremendously in the last few months. And I think that trend will continue, we believe. At the same time, the other side is Europe, which is another story, which, Europe going into the COVID has been really struggling. And for the last, almost 3 years, 2 to 3 years, it seems they've been in the recession. But certainly with the stimulus support from a Eurozone overall, they are really recovering faster. They are recovering faster than North America, and we're seeing that. So we're seeing a number of projects now led by Germany and France and even Spain that are starting to see some good signs of recovery there in Europe. And then really, Latin America is still unknown yet for us. They're still in the middle of it, and so next few months we'll see them picking back up. But North America seems to have a start and stop, if you will. So there was a pretty good start in June, I should say, May or June, and then it felt like here July we have taken a step back, and so it's a slower ramp up, but certainly improvement. So that's just in general, and particularly the markets that, when I speak about the markets, I didn't mention it, but the markets that we participate in, about 60% of our revenue is through industrial markets. So we've got, exposure to a variety of different applications in industrial space. We also participate in the oil and gas market. So we have quite an exposure in oil and gas side, in the mobile market, particularly in North America and Asia Pacific. So those are the three key primary markets for us. And when I say mobile, that is in construction, utility, and infrastructure space, if you will. So those are sort of the key markets for us. And where we see, as to your question around particularly what is going to drive further, what this needs to be to continue to support this recovery. And, again, from government standpoint, there's a number of steps being taken from fiscal and monetary standpoint. But I think the one that is really can accelerate and support North America, particularly US, I should say, is infrastructure build. And why I say that is a number of reasons. One, certainly it's been many years that there has been investment in infrastructure. And so at this point, really a lot of the infrastructure we have has been aging. And so when you think about the dams, when we think about the roads, just construction in general there hasn't been a lot of investment in many years. And so it's due. And I believe this is a great opportunity for US to leverage the low rates that are outstanding to really invest in ourselves, basically, right? And so invest in US, given the liquidity that's out there, and the position of the dollar there it is. So I think infrastructure bill could do support the recovery faster, certainly support the recovery, but also support, the next generation. When we talk about, hey, every time we do a fiscal and monetary stimulus, are we really, call it, stealing from the future? And I think infrastructure is a bit different. That is really where we can, absolutely say we would be building a stronger foundation for the future. And I think it's due. And so we really support infrastructure bill.
Well, since you kind of brought up before the how COVID has sort of impacted the markets, can you maybe talk a little bit about how you guys have seen it sort of impact the industry, or maybe what some of the biggest challenges have been that the pandemic has sort of brought about for either just the industry as a whole, or maybe the fluid power industry or mobile equipment markets?
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I think, certainly the COVID had positive and negative impact for sure, both sides of that. I think certainly the negative impact of COVID has been more, employee related. It's related to the team members globally, pretty much, across the board. Every site for us has been impacted some way or the other. Touch wood, we did not have any direct COVID cases in the organization, and that's been a good story. So we had, we got started early on it. As I said, giving the global kind of the support or global participation we have. Feels like we've been in it since literally December, where it started from China, and it's sort of been going around. So we learned quite a bit of lesson up front in January from there, which we've been able to leverage for, globally, and been able to really keep the team members safe. So that's been a good, again, as much as there's negative, it's also been positive for us. But, really to your question around how has COVID changed and what do we see related to that? I think number of things. I think one is just what we're doing right now. I think people are getting more and more comfortable with video chats, right? They're getting comfortable remote, I should say more than video. I think this whole notion of remote connectivity has really taken off. And certainly it's been like that within the organization, but also outside the organization. So now we have had many customers who typically would have come into the location, whether to do a site survey or whether to do some sort of, testing that we would be doing and participating in that testing or validation of the testing. We've been able to do all of that remotely. So now we have implemented, a lot of new kind of the remote technology on our test stand. We have really implemented that within our locations, and customers being able to do that. We had example where for the large OEM, we hosted a day at the site, which normally, as you can imagine, when you do a customer event like that, there's a lot of stuff go through. You got the food thing going on, and you got all the steps going, and we were able to pretty much mimic exactly that, except serving food on the online. Other than that, I think we were able to have different functional team participate accordingly, and walk them through, and that was very well accepted by the customer. So I think this trend around ability to now work remotely, connect remotely, ability or comfort zone there is, I think has a long-term impact of that, and it will continue to get supported, this long-term impact, based on what we see with also around the talent and so on and so forth, which we'll talk about for sure as we go further. But I think this whole notion of remote, I think, has been really what came out of the COVID.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so have you guys maybe seen any possible opportunities or for possible change or improvements? I mean, we've been hearing that a little bit from others in the industry. So just curious to maybe get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the positive for sure, and what has improved since then is if you think about the levels of productivity, right? So now, across the board, the travel has been down internally and for our customers as well. And you can do, it's amazing. We step back and think about it, how much time that we used to spend on traveling, and some travels were absolutely necessary, but there were many others that were really not necessary, and we just used to do it, just the fact because we were used to doing the travel.
Right.
And I think we're doing some of that now remotely, which is really supporting the levels of productivity. You can really get a lot more done. We can really get a lot more meetings completed. You can achieve quite a bit in a short time frame, with that, with the with not traveling and ability to work remotely. So I think that's where we continue to see the improvement. And now on the how we are serving the customer, that has shifted, and which has got really better too, because now, where we used to be able to do one meeting for a customer, now we're able to do multiple of that, right? So that's what's helping it. And some of the tools and diagnostic things that we are implementing now, and we've been implementing for now over the last few years, around proactive remote networking and remote data collection. I think that trend has really accelerated, and that will be the benefit that we will continue to see going forward.
Great. Um, and so what are maybe moving into, you brought up before some of the challenges, what are some of the biggest challenges maybe facing the industry currently, other than setting aside the global pandemic? Are there any other challenges the industry is facing?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, to your point, besides the short term we have, I think one of the biggest challenge industry was facing prior to COVID, and I think that has accelerated even more, has been around this whole notion of talent. I mean, if you think about in our industrial markets, particularly in industrial and infrastructure markets, the lack of talent was there before. It's really hard to find good people or new generation wanting to continue to be in it. It feels like everybody wants to go into technology, and so talent has been what we struggle. I think this whole notion of knowledge transfer, right? We've got a lot of knowledge sitting in some of the 10-year team members we have, and across the industry. And as they continue to get closer to retirement, it was a struggle prior to this to find the right people and continue to keep up with that knowledge transfer. I think this COVID has accelerated that trend even more so, and I think more folks have opted to retire even more, and certainly less folks continue to think about this space. So that's been the challenge, and that challenge is, like I said, is accelerated, which is why I think what I just talked about, ability to do remotely data, diagnostics, and IoT, I think those are all the things, all the tools that will also support, the other side of the challenges we have. So as much as, as I said, we've got opportunity to kind of, resolution for this challenge. And I think the good thing is market as a large and again, organizations as large are starting to adapt to those new tools.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then does that is there anything you guys are kind of doing to help with attracting workforce to the industry, or are you working with organizations? I know some of the associations and stuff, that's a big effort with them. And but is there anything you guys are doing to kind of help overcome that challenge?
Sure. There are two things I'll talk about. One is, let's talk about the talent first. And in terms of the talent, so we've got a number of, first of all, internal training programs. So we've got a pretty good career programs for folks coming in the organization. when we think about even the basic programs as welding, for example, or CNC machining, or working on service equipment or servicing, if you will. So we've got a lot of internal training programs where we rotate and team members through that helps them continue to kind of build the skill set, raise their skill set. So what we have been doing is really bringing in talent at a really, call it a entry level, and then supporting them in terms of training and development and moving up through the organization. So that's one thing we're doing. We're certainly connecting back to a number of different universities and technology, again, supporting the mechanical technology, supporting the hydraulics and mechanical engineering. So we work with, Michigan University, we work with them. We work with, University of Texas here in Austin. So there's a number of universities and local community colleges that we also partner with in order to make sure that there are, training programs and development programs that we support on, whether we go, do that to the curriculum, or many times we also do that by going into those classes and provide the training as well. So that's some of the that we're doing to continue to kind of drive the training and development. And on the other side, in terms of the data and the IoT, we've got a number of solutions now in place in terms of smart monitoring and condition monitoring to really start to make sure that it's not just a widget on an equipment, but really does some good predictive analysis where, as organizations are seeing, exiting of the talent, they can rely on new technology, they can rely on data gathering, and helps them analyze with, smaller workforce, if you will. And so we're sort of taking some of that, expertise and, out of their, I won't call it completely out of their hands, but, we're complementing that, if you will. So we're complementing with data and analysis around some of these issues that they may see, in their solutions. So that's on the other side that we're doing to support our customers from an industrial and an oil and gas standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so are there any maybe technologies or trends which you guys are kind of really excited about within the fluid power or heavy duty equipment industries, or most looking forward to seeing in the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, again, outside of what I talked about, the data and smart monitoring, I think that trend will continue to accelerate from here on now. I think we are really at the level one, barely at the entry level of that, particularly in the industrial space. We haven't really matured to that level, particularly in many heavy industries like forging and extrusion. We're barely getting started. So unlike consumer side, the technology hasn't really, hasn't been adapted in the industrial space. And I think that trend will accelerate. So we're positioned well to participate in that trend and really be a leader there. Outside of that, I think the other thing we continue to see in terms of application is, and this is really more technical, but it certainly we see this is need for continued higher pressure. So we've got a lot of different pumping and valve technology where we're developing with our innovation roadmap to support customers on that, where we see more and more need for higher pressure application. So that's the second one. And then I think the third one, which is really big one that has taken on, is this whole hybrid and electric. So that is the other trend that we're seeing starting to pick up a lot more. So we've got a number of solutions in terms of the test ends where, auto industry, as they're pivoting from, really from this hydraulics or mechanical or mechanical hydraulics into electric and electric hydraulics, we've been supporting the customers on that transition. So we've got, a number of customers, across the globe who we're working with in that transition. So I think between the smart monitoring, data gathering, higher pressure solutions, and this electric transition are the three critical ones that we have a participation, and then where we have a solutions for the customers therefore.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today and provide your insights into what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely our pleasure to participate in this, and hope hope we provided some good insights, and certainly looking forward to certainly where the market's going to shift over the next couple months.